There's a silent siege unfolding inside your body right now. Most people stand in front of the mirror and focus on the fat they can see. They pinch the soft layer beneath the skin, the subcutaneous fat, and treat it as a cosmetic flaw, something to diet away before summer or hide under loose clothing. But beneath that surface layer, wrapped tightly around your liver, pancreas, and intestines, exists a far more dangerous opponent: visceral fat. Unlike the fat under your skin, visceral fat is not passive. It doesn't simply sit there waiting to be burned, it's biologically active. Visceral fat behaves like its own endocrine organ. It releases inflammatory cytokines into your bloodstream, disrupts cardiovascular function, interferes with insulin, and scrambles hormonal communication throughout the body. But the most unsettling truth about visceral fat isn't just what it does, it's why it exists. Visceral fat isn't there simply because you ate too much or skipped the gym. It's there because at a biological level, your body believes you are under threat. If you want to understand how to eliminate this dangerous tissue, you first have to understand the architect that built it. Cortisol. Before you see cortisol as the enemy, pause for a moment. In the modern world, cortisol is labeled the stress hormone, something to suppress, block, or eliminate. But from an evolutionary standpoint, cortisol was once your greatest ally. For over 200,000 years, cortisol was one of the most critical chemicals for human survival. Picture our ancestors on the savannah. A predator emerges, food becomes scarce, a rival tribe appears. In response, the brain triggered a powerful survival cascade known as the HPA axis, the communication loop between the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and adrenal glands. This was the body's emergency override system. Digestion shut down, reproduction paused, muscle building stopped. Instead, cortisol flooded the bloodstream with glucose, fueling a fight-or-flight response designed to keep you alive. And here's where the story turns, and where modern problems begin. Once danger passed, the body needed fast, reliable access to energy. Evolution discovered that storing fat in the arms or legs was inefficient. Heavy limbs slow you down. And if you're escaping a predator, speed matters. The liver, your body's chemical processing center, needed fuel close by. So evolution created a specialized storage strategy. It placed a high density of glucocorticoid receptors, essentially cortisol docking stations, deep within the abdominal cavity. When cortisol levels rose, these receptors pulled fat from the bloodstream and locked it tightly around vital organs. For a hunter-gatherer, this was brilliant design. If you survived a winter, a famine, or an attack, visceral fat became your emergency reserve. Energy stored exactly where your organs could access it instantly. Visceral fat was a survival backpack, an insurance policy against death. The problem is this: your biology hasn't updated its software in thousands of years, but your environment has changed overnight. There are no predators stalking you today. Instead, there are deadlines. Traffic, blue light from screens, financial pressure, social tension. The threats are no longer brief and physical. They're constant, and your body responds to them the same way it always has. If you want to understand how to shut down this ancient survival program and reclaim control of your metabolism, make sure you're subscribed, because this is only the beginning of the story. Because in the modern world, stress isn't acute, it's chronic, and that changes everything. You are simmering in low-grade anxiety for most of the day, often 14 to 16 hours without realizing it. This creates what scientists call the cortisol trap. Because stress never fully turns off, cortisol levels never return to baseline. Your body remains locked in a constant emergency posture. It keeps signaling the liver to release glucose for a physical threat that never arrives. But here's the problem: that glucose has nowhere to go. You're not sprinting from danger. You're sitting in traffic, staring at screens, or replaying worries in your head. So the pancreas steps in, releasing insulin to clear sugar from the bloodstream. And this is where the loop tightens. Insulin is a storage hormone. When cortisol is high and insulin is high, the body has only one logical move: store that excess energy. And it stores it exactly where cortisol wants it, deep inside visceral fat cells. You become trapped in a biological feedback loop. Your body is preparing obsessively for famine, danger, and survival, while you continue feeding it in a world of constant availability. Stress builds fat. Fat fuels inflammation. Inflammation raises stress. The loop feeds itself. Then comes a quieter, more devastating consequence: the pregnenolone steal. Cortisol is so critical for survival that the body prioritizes its production above all else. To make cortisol, the body uses a precursor hormone called pregnenolone. But pregnenolone is also the building block for testosterone and estrogen. When stress remains high, the body diverts this raw material toward cortisol production, leaving sex hormones depleted. This explains a very specific and increasingly common body pattern, the so-called skinny fat phenotype. Thin arms, thin legs, but a firm, distended belly. High cortisol doesn't just store fat, it rearranges your body. Muscle tissue in the limbs is broken down, converted into glucose, and then redeposited as fat around vital organs. This isn't simple weight gain, it's structural remodeling driven by an ancient survival blueprint designed for the Stone Age. And there's another layer to this trap, one that explains cravings you've probably blamed on willpower. Enter neuropeptide Y. Under chronic stress, your body releases this chemical specifically to drive carbohydrate cravings. Not because you're weak, but because biology is speaking. Neuropeptide Y tells the brain that energy demand is high and replenishment must be fast. Sugar, refined carbs, comfort food. You are fighting a signal nearly as powerful as the urge to breathe. So how do we break this loop? How do we convince the body to release visceral fat instead of guarding it? The answer is not starvation, and it's not punishing exercise. You cannot stress visceral fat away. Extreme dieting and excessive cardio only reinforce the body's belief that danger is ongoing. In fact, long sessions of steady-state cardio, hours of running, can mimic the stress of an endless hunt. Cortisol rises even further, fat clings tighter. Instead, the solution lies in signaling safety. You must convince your autonomic nervous system that the war is over, that survival mode is no longer required. The first shift is redefining movement. High-intensity interval training has value, but in a body already flooded with cortisol, it can sometimes backfire. The most effective tool for lowering cortisol while burning fat is low-intensity, steady-state movement. Walking. Walking decouples fat burning from stress. It allows the body to use fat as fuel without triggering the fight or flight alarm. Anthropologists suggest walking was the default state of human existence. And there's more. As you walk, optic flow, the steady movement of scenery past your eyes, directly calms the amygdala, the brain's fear center. It tells your nervous system, you are moving forward, you are not trapped, you are safe. But to truly strip away visceral fat, this signal of safety must be paired with a signal of strength, one that protects muscle. And that's where the next piece enters. Lifting heavy objects sends one of the most powerful anabolic signals your body can receive. It directly counters the muscle-breaking catabolic effects of cortisol. Heavy resistance training raises testosterone and growth hormone, two hormones that actively oppose visceral fat storage. By building muscle, you also improve insulin sensitivity. Glucose finally has somewhere productive to go, into muscle tissue, instead of being shoved back into fat around your organs. This is not about aesthetics. It's about changing how your body processes energy. The second pillar is nutritional timing. What you eat matters, but when you eat may matter even more. Cortisol follows a circadian rhythm. It should peak in the morning to wake you up and fall at night to allow rest and repair. Modern life flips this upside down. Late caffeine keeps cortisol elevated. Late sugar spikes insulin when the body should be winding down. To correct this, you must realign with biology. A protein-forward breakfast supports dopamine and thyroid activity, setting metabolic momentum without triggering large insulin spikes. In contrast, placing most of your carbohydrates in the evening can actually be strategic. Carbohydrates increase serotonin, which converts into melatonin, the hormone that initiates sleep. When carbs are eaten at dinner, they help blunt nighttime cortisol, allowing the body to exit defense mode and enter repair mode during sleep. And this brings us to the most critical and most ignored factor of all: sleep. One night of poor sleep can reduce insulin sensitivity by up to 40%. If you consistently sleep fewer than 7 hours, your body interprets this as a serious stressor, similar to injury or illness. Baseline cortisol rises the following day to keep you alert. And elevated cortisol means visceral fat storage resumes immediately. This creates the tired but wired state, exhausted yet unable to shut down because stress hormones are stuck in the on position. Sleep hygiene is not passive rest. Cool temperatures, darkness, routine, these are active metabolic strategies. At the micronutrient level, chronic stress rapidly depletes key minerals, especially magnesium. Often called the relaxation mineral, magnesium regulates nervous system tone. When magnesium is low, cortisol responses become exaggerated. Stress becomes amplified. Clinical studies show that magnesium glycinate paired with adaptogens like ashwagandha or rhodiola can significantly reduce circulating cortisol levels. These are not miracle pills. They are tools designed to lower biological noise so the body can finally hear the signal to release stored fat. We can also leverage hormetic stressors, short, controlled challenges that strengthen resilience. Cold exposure, such as cold showers or ice baths, initially raises cortisol, but with repeated exposure, the nervous system learns to recover faster. Baseline stress levels drop. Cold exposure also activates brown adipose tissue, a form of fat that burns energy to produce heat, supporting metabolic health from another angle. Finally, we must address the psychological layer. Visceral fat is physical, but its trigger is often perceptual. The brain cannot reliably distinguish between a physical threat and a psychological one. If your life feels like a constant emergency, your biochemistry will reflect that belief. Practices like deep diaphragmatic breathing are not spiritual cliches. They are neurological switches. Slow, deep breathing stimulates the vagus nerve, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest state. This is the only state in which the body feels safe enough to release emergency energy reserves. In the end, burning visceral fat is not a battle of discipline. It's a negotiation with your biology. You are countering millions of years of evolutionary programming designed to keep you alive during famine and danger. Visceral fat protected your ancestors. But to thrive in the modern world, you must prove to your body that the crisis is over. By prioritizing sleep, combining walking with heavy lifting, aligning nutrition with circadian rhythms, managing minerals, and calming the nervous system, you do more than lose weight. You reset your hormonal baseline. You shut off the emergency alarm. And when that alarm finally goes quiet, the fortress of visceral fat begins to fall. If this video helped you understand why your body behaves the way it does, like this video, subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. What part surprised you the most? Because when you understand your biology, you stop fighting it and finally start winning.